Hey guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at Justino Tweets. This is the first official episode of the Daily Download. So I've been basically just searching for a name to call this daily show that wasn't what everybody else was calling it. So we're going to call it the Daily Download. And essentially, this is going to be your number one place for Arsenal transfer news and regular news regarding Arsenal. So daily show, probably sometime around this time, unless something happens. But make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. We'll be going through today's biggest headlines. And I have to be honest, when I woke up, there was so much going on today that I decided to break up the news into two separate shows. So on today's show, we're going to be going through basically Saliba. Arteta said Saliba has to come back, as well as Newcastle weighing up a $50 million or £50 million bid for Kieran Tierney. Saka, Ramsdale, and Saka, Ramsdale, and White's call up to the England national team, the future of Gabriel Magalhaes, as well as Osimhen talks and Richarlison news. So that's what we're going to be going through on this particular episode. And then later on tonight, at about 10 p.m. UK time, we'll be going through and talking about Arsenal's transfer plans. As described by David Ornstein, The Athletic came out with a long article kind of outlining what Arsenal and Arteta and Edu's plans for the transfer window is. So make sure you guys, hit the bell and subscribe, because that will be coming out a little bit later. And on this show, we're going to kind of talk about the ones that are outside of that Athletic article. How are you guys feeling? There's about 84 of you guys in here. So like that video, subscribe to the channel, get in the chat box, let me know how you guys are feeling. I also have a community poll going on around Kieran Tierney. Obviously, with Newcastle looking to put in a bid, there are some Arsenal fans, that are say take the money and run. And you guys know how I feel. It really hurts me a lot to hear that people are kind of done with Kieran Tierney. But I hear the concerns around his injury record and things like that. So yeah, go ahead and get voting in that community poll now. And we're going to go ahead and get started. Let's see who is in the chat. Happily Egg says, I genuinely like Tierney, but he has to stay fit. He has pace to burn. Great little player. The Jocks are producing some excellent fullbacks. High Tech J says, 50 million for a fullback who can't stay fit to save his life is a steal. Take the money and run. Nikomo says, Saliba, I swear he has spoken more about than most players who contributed this season. Yo-Yo says, speaking of fullbacks, Nuno's appearing on a podcast. Awesome. I'd love to see or hear what Nuno has to say in regards to like his career and all that kind of stuff. What podcast is it, Yo-Yo? Enzo says we shouldn't sell any regular team starters if we are serious about challenging. Need upgrades and cover at fullback and central midfield. Hightower says 2 streams today. Absolutely 2 streams today. There's just too much to go through to put it into one stream. So daily, we're doing a daily download, how we usually were doing the daily streams. And then later on, it'll be more of an open discussion around the transfer plans that were outlined by The Athletic and David Ornstein. Blaze asks, Jess, how you doing? I'm doing good. I really can't complain. You guys know this is my bag. This is what I get excited for, is transfer rumors and stuff like that. So, and because there's some interesting ones, I can't wait to talk about it. Spooch says, Jess, breaking news, Spurs to spend 150 million. Or 250 million. I saw that they got a cash injection from their owners. I never went into this window thinking that they wouldn't spend or they wouldn't back Conte. I saw it was 150, so maybe they're adding that to player sales or something like that. But the reality is like, who cares? They're going to do their thing. We're going to do our thing. Manchester United is going to spend a lot of money. Chelsea is as well. And we know that spending money doesn't necessarily always equal a lot of improvement. It has to be the right signings at the right time that really address your issues. And so for me, it's kind of like, I know we're going to spend, and I'm more concerned about what Arsenal does than what Spurs does. But they were always going to give Conte some money. And so we just need to worry about ourselves as far as I'm concerned. Arnolito says, I'm feeling a little more positive about this summer. Yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. Saliba, this is the big headline for today, is that Arteta tells RMC William Saliba has to come back. And I do think a lot of us were kind of waiting on something like this to come out from Arteta's mouth. It's been very much a lot of talking on Saliba's age, like from Saliba's agent and from Saliba himself, but not a lot from the club. So basically, Arteta on Saliba, he says William Saliba has to come back. He has the experience to be competitive with us. We sent him to Marseille for his growth. William wanted to be a regular starter, as you know, but we now want him back at Arsenal. If he stayed with us this year with a match a week with White and Gabriel, he wouldn't have had half the playing time he had with Marseille. He wasn't with us because he wouldn't have had the playing time to gain experience. That's it. Nothing else. So, yeah, I mean, those are the types of quotes that you want to hear from Arteta in regards to Saliba. It still wasn't as warm and fuzzy as I was hoping it would be. Like, you know, he's a great player. It's just more just typical Arteta, very kind of icy and, not really anything that gives you any sort of warmth. Like, it's very much like just, we want him back. He has experience. Boom. Nevertheless, this is good news. I know that there's going to be skepticism around this as well, because although Arteta and the club have plans for Saliba may want to stay at Marseille or, look at his other options. And I think it's up to Arsenal not to cave into what William Saliba wants and make sure that we do what's best for us. What's best for Arsenal is for him to come back and be the third center back, and for us to have that level of quality backing up White and Gabriel. And, it doesn't make sense to have went through all of that, loaning him out those, 3 times, and then for him to just go and apply his trade somewhere other than Arsenal. So, I think Arsenal just need to be what can he do if we want him to stay? Like, there's nothing he can do. And quite frankly, because it's a World Cup year and he's going to want to be in that French national team squad, when he gets opportunities to play for Arsenal next season, he'll play well. He won't down tools because he can. So for me, it's kind of like Arsenal need to be strong here. And even if, maybe William Saliba does want, to stay at Marseille, they just say no, and he just comes back to preseason. I mean, we've seen it before with players that, are kind of on the outs or maybe are not 100% sure that, their parent club or the club that they're at or they belong to is the right place for them. It's up to the club to show them that this is the right thing for him and for them. So there's going to have to maybe be some, squashing of beef. I mean, I'm not 100% sure that there is beef to be squashed, but if there is, just pull him aside and put your arm around his shoulder and just get over it. Like, at this point, he's too good of a player for us to just let him go. And they just need to go ahead and offer him a new contract, give him some extra cash and move on. He is a top young center back, and for Arsenal to lose him would be a travesty as far as I'm concerned. It just would look really stupid as far as I'm concerned, because it only makes sense if we get him back. All the loaning out and stuff, if he's not coming back, then we might as well have sold him already. You know what I mean? So there was also, reports coming out around Marseille's ability to actually purchase William Saliba. They don't have the money to do it. So what they wanted to have is another loan, and that's absolutely not going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, we're not going to loan him back out and allow them to keep him for another season. We need multiple center backs, for next season, and because we're going to be in 4 competitions. So Marseille, he's our player. just move on, you know? Let's just move it on past. Ahmed says, finally, our best center back is here. Lay down the law says the statement, William Saliba has to come back, is different from he's coming back. I mean, I feel like maybe you're trying to read into something that's not there. I mean, he basically, I mean, I can read the quote again if you'd like, but he said, if he stayed with us this year with a match a week, he wouldn't have gotten the playing time. He wasn't with us because he wouldn't have had playing time to gain experience. That's it. There's nothing else. And you know, William wanted to be a regular starter, as you know, but now we want him back at Arsenal. So there's nothing really, there's no, you know, words to read in between or anything like that. He said we want him back at Arsenal. He has to come back. So it's not really that different, right? I think we're trying to see something that's not there. How much more clear could you be beyond William has to come back and we want him back at Arsenal? That's super clear as far as I'm concerned. Chris says Saliba's contract is the main issue here. 2 years to go. And if he refuses to sign, we will have to sell. You know, but this is also something that I've seen this before where somebody refuses to sign a contract. I think, do we have an option for an additional year? I have to look back on it. We may have the ability to trigger an additional year. But even if we don't, I would say bring him back in and make him want to stay. I think ultimately, if he's in a scenario where he sees that we're serious, he's getting the playing time, and he's happy at Arsenal, he will sign a deal. And it might take a little bit of convincing, a little bit of, you know, him being at the club, and then you offer it to him maybe in 6 months or so. So I do think it's worth the risk to bring him back regardless. The club may feel like they need to sell, but I think Arteta's statement was pretty clear. We need him. So the Winchester Pubcast says Saliba's coming back with experience is a great thing and definitely smart to do, though. Saliba still is going to be on the table. He can do what he wants right now. And the whole, he wants to play Champions League football, not Europa. I mean, a lot of the quotes that have been coming out from Saliba have been misrepresented by, GFFN and other French publications to just make Arsenal fans lose their mind. He never said he didn't want to come back to Arsenal. He never said, that he wants to play only Champions League and not Europa. He also said we have to see at the end of that comment around, them, qualifying for Champions League and him wanting to play. He said, we'll have to see. So I think also, and I have to do this as well, is not be so desperate or, just hungry to see something negative that's not actually there. They misrepresented a lot of the quotes that he said. He always said, we'll have to see because I belong to Arsenal. And ultimately, we have to offer him a new contract. And I wouldn't be surprised if he signed it if we offered him enough money and guarantees on playing time. Just like Konate, offer him the European matches as his. And, that might be enough, that he knows he's going to play a certain amount of games. Let's see. Ahmed says he's clear of White and Gabriel, even though they're good defenders. The Winchester Pubcast says Saliba did decent on loan, but he will have to learn the league, and the Premier League is so different. We need to shake off his bad habits. I do think that, if you watch Saliba play, he makes mistakes just like everybody else. And let's not be under any illusion that League One is anything like the Premier League. It's completely different. And there will be an adaptation time when he comes back to Arsenal. So, we also need to be realistic that he may not just walk in over White and Gabriel. He might need some time to acclimate. But he doesn't really head the ball well. He has some areas to improve still, but he's still so good, and it makes absolutely no sense to get rid of him. Reggie Perry says, while I think the org should have said more to reduce the fan anxiety, any perceived beef between Saliba and Arteta was just the agenda merchants. Jabril says, do y'all think Saliba leave a club like Marseille and UCL to go back to Arsenal where the manager didn't rate him. Arteta never said he didn't rate him. He wanted to get him experience, so this whole there was a point in time where people had convinced themselves that Arteta hated Martinelli. And we've done it again with Saliba, because if you don't like Arteta, he hated Guendouzi, Aubameyang, Ozil, Saliba. He hates all these great players, and Arteta is just a fraud. He never said that he didn't rate Saliba. He wanted him to get experience. And I don't actually think a lot of Arsenal fans watch Saliba play. I really don't think so, because if you did, you would know that at 18, 19, he needed more experience, and you only arrive in the Premier League once. And the forced comparisons to Fofana. Fofana was playing in a back 3/back 5 where a lot of his mistakes were being covered up by Soyuncu and Johnny Evans. And not only that, it's Leicester. If he makes a mistake, he can just shake it off, which Fofana did make mistakes when he first came into the Premier League. Saliba cannot come in and start next to Gabriel and make mistakes. He won't survive. So I don't think it's that big of a deal that he went on loan, as long as he comes back. And the idea that Arteta didn't rate him, I think, is being completely overblown. And it may just be he wanted to get him experience. And because nobody trusts Arteta, if that was Ancelotti, nobody would question it. It's just because Arteta is a new manager, and we're very reluctant to, I think as a fan base, we don't really trust all the decisions that he makes because he doesn't have the CV to really back it up. But if you watch Saliba play, and you watched him since he was 18, you put him next to Gabriel starting in the Premier League, and he makes one mistake, and that's it. The way people have killed Ben White, the way people have killed Gabriel, it's not that easy. Captain Joka says, we need 3 starters and 2 backups. Gabriel, Saliba, White are starters, holding another center back, and then we are good. High Tech J says, if Saliba is as good as everybody says, he'll be an integral starter soon enough. Also, if he doesn't sign, who cares? His mind will change when we're winning. He's getting French call-ups and starting. Hightower says, convince him to stay with playing time. That's how I kind of feel. I think if he doesn't want to sign right away, what you have to do is not be, high and mighty. There's some players that are worth, I think, trying to convince and giving them playing time to show that you love them and all that kind of stuff. And if we're willing to do that with Eddie Nketiah, then why wouldn't you do it with William Saliba? Just give him the playing time, show him that you're serious, and I think things will turn around. I don't think if he just doesn't sign this summer that you can't show him what you think of him and then try to get him to sign 6 months later. It's a risk, but it's a risk I'd be willing to take, because ultimately we're not going to get a lot of money for him anyway, at this point. So Yo-Yo says, I expect Saliba to struggle next season, especially if he's the rotation like Sambi and Nuno were this season. At the same time, though, Yo-Yo, we didn't have European football, so I think Nuno and Sambi really suffered from us not having additional games for them to kind of knock the cobwebs off and kind of get into a groove. And I also think Saliba has more experience than they do playing first team football in general. I don't think, Sambi has much experience, and Anderlecht playing in the Belgium league is not really high quality experience anyway. And then Nuno had 19 or 20 first team appearances before he came to Arsenal. Saliba has been playing first team football for 2.5 years now, and he has tons of minutes under his belt. So I don't actually think, I think the addition of European football with the fact that he has more experience than the other two will see him maybe react differently to being a rotational option than those two. I wouldn't even lump them all in the same category because Saliba is further in his progression than they are. Billy says, I think Saliba wants to play for Arsenal. He's always waiting for his opportunity. And there were quotes that came out from Saliba not too long ago saying that he just doesn't want to be in the under 23s. But he wants to fight for his spot. People have forgotten that he said those quotes. So yeah, I mean, it could go either way. It could go either way. I think it's maybe, if I had to put like a number on it, I would say I'm 80% sure he plays for Arsenal next season, 20% that he still may be sold. I mean, there's still always an opportunity for, if something good comes along, like a big bid from Real Madrid or something like that, I could still see him going. But I think it's in Arsenal's best interest to keep him. San Vincent says, why do you guys think he's better than Gabriel? I don't actually think he's better than Gabriel because I have not seen Saliba play in the Premier League. I just think that it's like you see the compilations and you see all the accolades in the French media over Saliba, and you just decide that he's better without actually watching him play in the Premier League. And so until I see that, I don't think you can make a definitive decision, or like you can say unequivocally that Saliba is better than Gabriel until you see it. But would I be surprised if Saliba was better than Gabriel? No. I mean, Saliba has a really high ceiling, in my opinion. I think he has the highest ceiling out of all of our center backs. But where he is right now, I'm not quite sure how that measures up to in the Premier League. So yeah, it's good news. It's a little bit better than, what we have been hearing over the last couple of weeks from GFFN. They have been, and they've always been like this when it comes to Arsenal. So I'm not really surprised that they were really pushing the narrative that Saliba was going to go. But we have a lot of the cards in our hands. So hopefully Arsenal do the right thing and keep him. He is right-footed. So, I mean, he would be and this is something that we'll talk about in the show at 10 p.m. UK time, regarding Arsenal's plans for the summer window, coming from The Athletic and Ornstein. But they are looking at a left-sided center back, which would suggest that Holding would either be the fifth choice or he would leave. So Saliba would be the right-sided center back, and we would bring in another left-sided center back to back up Gabriel or to compete with Gabriel. So I don't think we have to worry too much about Saliba being right-footed or left-footed. So yeah, let's see. All right, so that's enough of that. Let's just see what happens, though, you guys. I would say let's not get too caught up because things can change really, really quickly. And so anything can happen. But I think those are promising quotes from Mikel Arteta coming out today. There is almost 300 of you guys in here. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. We have a new member, She Knows Football. Thank you so much for joining She Knows Arsenal, as well as Jayville. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you guys joining the channel. Here. All right. Osimhen. So this one was exciting. I'm not going to lie. So yeah. But Victor Osimhen's agent flew in for talks with Arsenal. And basically, this is coming from, I believe, Charles Watts. And where's my bookmark? Where is my bookmark? I'm so annoyed. I have all this stuff bookmarked, and now all of a sudden it's gone. Give me 1 second, you guys. Let me find my bookmark for it. Here. Victor Osimhen's agent flew in for talks with Arsenal last week. The Nigerian striker is high up on Arsenal's target list this summer. We know that Victor Osimhen I think he's a top striker, and he's somebody that would give us a different look. He's the type of striker that center backs don't want to play up against. And he's played, I think, really well against some of the more physical center backs in Serie A. He has like 16 goals this season. There are some Arsenal fans that are like, that's not a good enough goal tally, but you have to remember that he was injured for a large part of the season. So you have to take that into consideration. But his agent flying into London to speak to Arsenal, I think, speaks to maybe his desire to play in London and play in the Premier League, and potentially even that being Arsenal. The issue is he made such a big move to Napoli 2 years ago for about 80 million euros or something like that from Lille. So the idea that we would get him for anything under than 100 million, I think, is fantasy. And Arsenal would have to really stump up the cash for somebody like Osimhen, and he would have to want to leave, which his agent talking to us, I think, would suggest that. But this would be a statement signing from Arsenal. And I go back and forth about this every day about the idea, like, do we need a statement signing? Do we need the type of signing that people will look at and say, okay, Arsenal are serious, or do we just need to take our 150 to 200 million and spend it equally across a bunch of players? I know you guys probably have your own ideas around that. I still flip-flop every single day about whether or not we need to bring in somebody like this for this kind of statement signing. This is somebody that you give the big wages to. You basically take Lacazette's wages and you put it in his bank account and give him the number 14. That's the type of striker that this is. This is the type of statement signing that it is. When you go down kind of the same type of striker, the same type of profile, you have Osimhen probably at the tippy top of the shopping list, and then you have Tammy Abraham a little bit lower, and then you have Dominic Calvert-Lewin kind of way down beyond that. And I do think profile-wise, we do need somebody like this. We need somebody that's a physical presence in the box, somebody that center backs don't have an easy day out against. We need somebody like this. And I don't think anybody that we have in the team right now can offer that. And I don't think Gabriel Jesus can offer that. I think he's a good presser and a good kind of false nine, just a good footballer all around. But when we talking about like the complete nine, that's what Victor Osimhen is. And he's not really like Aubameyang, because Aubameyang didn't like to get stuck in with the center backs. He's different than that, but he's also very fast and can play. You can play him in behind, and he works extremely hard. He's a good striker of the ball, which Dominic Calvert-Lewin is not. When Osimhen hits the ball, he freaking means it. And the way he gets his head on the ball, I think, is something that could be beneficial for somebody like Kieran Tierney. A lot of people were really frustrated about the way that he played this season because, he doesn't play like a Cancelo type. Well, you don't need to play like a Cancelo type when you have somebody like Victor Osimhen in the box. So I think this would be a really good signing. I just don't know if Arsenal have the facilities to get it done. And I don't know if Napoli and their director of football, De Laurentiis, would be. We know that they're really tough negotiators, but the fact that Osimhen's agent has come to London does give me a little bit of hope that maybe Arsenal are looking to bring somebody like this in. I do think you have to sacrifice some of your window to get something like this done. So if you wanted to bring in an Osimhen and a Jesus and a Yuri Tielemans, you'd probably only get like one more signing off of the back of that. So you wouldn't be able to spread it across like 5 or 6 players. It would be more like 3, 4 signings instead of that, but I feel like it's almost worth it. Arsenal need somebody that people are afraid to play against, and Osimhen is definitely that. So what are your thoughts on Victor Osimhen? Captain Joka says, having Osimhen at Arsenal will be a big blow. During AFCON, we will lose Partey, El Neni, and him. What's the cost of this season? We need South American or European striker, Nunez, Jesus, and Felix. I think we place too much emphasis on it because AFCON was just like the other day. It's every 2 seasons, right? So I don't think it's a huge blow if you have somebody else that can play. I mean, did it hurt Liverpool? Not really, because they had other players that could stand in for, Mo Salah and Mane when they were gone. So I almost feel like, it doesn't really matter for this season. Maybe it matters for the season after. And if you have somebody else that can step in, it's not that big of a deal, in my opinion. It's a game or two. Like Thomas Partey missed like 2 games or something like that. Not that big of a deal. Kaza says the next AFCON is happening in the summer break. Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. I still don't think it's that big of a deal, if I'm honest with you guys. Gun or Rolla says if we have even the slightest chance of Osimhen, you go all in, you don't miss out. Lynn says, but surely just long term, Victor and Jesus would have the pulling power to bring in the quality players. They would help the young players mentally, the young players' mentality. Yeah, I mean, Osimhen is a young player in himself, so I do think, you know, maybe relying upon him to help the young players would be maybe a little bit of a stretch, but I do think Jesus has that ability. But with Osimhen, you just have somebody in your team that center backs don't want to play up against. He's not somebody that you're going to have an easy day out against. He's going to run the channels. He's going to be, he's also somebody that can hold the ball up and get us out of dodge. Like there's times where we get pinned back against good teams, you know, and when we try to send it out, there's nobody to be kind of an outlet, and he can be an outlet, run the channels. He's decent on the ball. Like obviously he's not going to be, you know, like Gabriel Jesus on the ball, but it doesn't really matter when you have somebody of that quality. So for me, like it's a no-brainer if you could get it done. I think I would spend the money, even knowing that we probably won't be able to address every single position that we really want to. The Winchester Pubcast says, Victor, I need, but he would need service, and a number 8 has to be good. I think that's where somebody like Yuri Tielemans comes in. She Knows Football says, I've said Osimhen in chat since January over and over and over. Now people are listening. I also think that like people just don't believe that we have the facilities to get this done, and we still may not be able to, but I'd rather see us actually try to go for it and see what we could do than just let it go. Liam says, Napoli admire a few of our players, so we could do money plus player swap. I mean, could you send Pepe the other way potentially? You know, that might be some way to make weight, but also think Napoli are going to want all the cash because of what they spent for Osimhen, but I hear that. Oda, I'm just going to say Oto, okay? Because I don't want to like kill your name, but Osimhen would be a great signing for us. I do agree. There's 350 if you guys watching. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, vote on the community poll, and get in the chat and let me know what you guys think about Victor Osimhen to Arsenal. If you think it's likely, if you don't like the player, if you like him, what do you think? Yo-Yo says, skill set matters most. Pepe was a statement signing for F's sake. Arsenal don't need to move loud, just smart. Fair enough. But doesn't his skill set also match what Arsenal need? And if you can't get Tammy Abraham, because we're not going to be able to get Tammy Abraham, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin is below the level, then you know maybe Osimhen is somebody that you could get if you spend the money. I don't think he doesn't have the skill set. Like I can kind of understand what you're saying about like you want to just make sure the skill set is there, but it's also about like availability and value for money. And I think Tammy Abraham is, if you have to deal with Chelsea and Roma and the fact that Mourinho just doesn't want to sell him, and then the next level down is Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I think you have to look at Victor Osimhen and see if you can get something done. The Winchester Pubcast says Victor would be a great signing, but I don't know if he would be a statement signing. Honestly, I would need to see the budget. We need more than 150 million for that. I think that's where like, you know, the selling players would come in, you know. I think that's where selling players comes in. Andy says Isak is a similar profile but would be cheaper. I kind of disagree on that because, you know, Isak is basically like a wide forward. Like he doesn't really operate centrally. Like Osimhen gives you centrality. He's somebody that can operate centrally because he can be physical with center backs where Isak cannot. And strangely, kind of like Tammy Abraham, Isak is not particularly good in the air, and he's not really physical in that way. He's more fast and awkward because of his size. So for me, it's not a really similar profile. Also, you could, if you're going to spend 100 million on Victor Osimhen, you could probably pay in installments. Whereas if you want to get Isak, you might have to pay the entire release clause of 75 million. And so for me, that makes it pretty much, you know, equal in terms of what we would have to do in order to get the player. So I'm not sure the profile is similar. I hear what you're saying, but like, and Isak has had such a bad season. I just don't know if it makes sense to bring somebody like that in. Jay says that would be a nightmare for opposition defenses, and we need that threat. I kind of agree with that. I do think that we need somebody that people are scared to play against. And right now, we don't have that. We are a center back's dream. And when I watch Victor Osimhen play, I just think he's a nightmare. He runs after lost causes, he presses, he's quick, he can run in behind, he can also hold the ball up, he buys fouls, and when he hits the ball, he means it. He's not somebody that takes weird shots, you know what I mean, that are like really weak or with their toe. Like when he hits it, he means it. And he can get in the air and get those headers. So yeah, I like that. Kaza says Osimhen has one of the best non-penalty goal ratios in Europe, better than Vlahovic. Would be a great signing. Yo-Yo says it wasn't criticism of the player, it's criticism of the desire to see Arsenal spend big. I've seen very little of the player. I have no opinion on him. Yeah, no, I hear that. If you haven't seen the player, then you haven't seen him. I get like some Arsenal fans just want to see us buy big players, and regardless of what the skill set is or if they even fit. My thing with Osimhen is he kind of ticks all the boxes. Statement signing, a type of profile that we need, the age profile that would fit. It's just about whether or not Arsenal have the facilities to actually put the money down, for him, and how that would also impact the rest of the window, which I think you would be crazy to think it wouldn't, and I wouldn't, maybe it's a matter of you can get Gabriel Jesus and another like a Gakpo type of striker, or you get a Osimhen and you have to keep Nketiah. If it's that type of spread, then I'm a little bit leery of getting Osimhen because I don't really think Nketiah is a good enough backup, and I think Arsenal are really wanting to get Gabriel Jesus over the line. Billy says Jesus, Tielemans, Scamacca, Hickey, Gakpo, Sinistera, more realistic. I would like another midfielder, but Elneny stays, so I don't see it. Still a very good window, though. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like getting something like this, I think all but takes away the opportunity to bring in more than one midfielder, but maybe it's worth it. You guys let me know. Is it worth, getting Osimhen and Tielemans and Gabriel Jesus as your big signings, that are old, like a little bit older and can really move the needle. But maybe you don't get anything else. Is it worth it? Yo-Yo says Jesus, Osimhen put to bed all the talk of Martinelli being a 9 when he's already behind Eddie. Yeah, and I think we've projected the Gabriel Martinelli being a center forward thing. I haven't seen it yet, so maybe it's not real. But I think it would put that to bed. So I get what you're saying. The editor says Nketiah is not good enough. He should go to a mid-table team. I hope he goes. Like I'm on record saying I hope he goes so that we actually invest in our strikers. We have to actually go out and buy them. And you guys let me know, is it worth it? Like if we got Osimhen, Gabriel Jesus, and Tielemans, and maybe a free signing, is that good enough? Are you willing to deal with Tavares for another season? They've already, like in the Athletic article, we'll talk about this later, but they've all but, confirmed that we're not going to go for a right back. So, are you okay with just bringing in 3 players? And I feel like it might be worth it. Even though we know if we get injuries, it might be like, damn, probably should have did something else, Liam says goals from strikers is going to change us like when we signed Aubameyang. Joel says injury prone, but perhaps we could get Tolisso on a free as another midfielder without spending money. I mean, that's where we have to be smart and look for players that can come in on a free. It's really unfortunate that we didn't go after Boubacar Kamara. I think that could have solved a lot of our issues, but I mean, some people are like, I'd rather spread the money over 6 players or so, but what the Athletic kind of said was that we're not going to do that. We're going to spend on like maybe 3 or 4. So you have to see. You really have to see. I mean, I saw a comment here. that I wanted to read out. Where'd it go? High Tech J says Osimhen, Tielemans, Saliba, Jesus is in someone else is a fantastic summer. St. Vincent says, honestly, all your other business means very little if you don't get goals in the team. I agree. Anike says, I think Nketiah will blossom if he stays or goes. He's got all the ingredients to develop into a quality striker. It's just a matter of like, if you brought in Osimhen, right, and he got injured, would you trust the rest of your season to Eddie Nketiah? That's the question we need to be asking ourselves. If Osimhen got in a cruciate injury, he was out for 9 months, do we trust our season to Eddie Nketiah? Or would you, I think that's kind of where I'm at with it, because you have to kind of, you have to expect the worst and say, okay, at the worst, what does the lineup look like? And at the worst, if the lineup has Gabriel Jesus in it, I prefer that. I don't really like the idea of Nketiah being the backup, because I just don't see how he could hold up the team with if something were to happen. So yeah, there you go. But that's the Osimhen news. I love that. So 330 of you guys are in here. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Let me go ahead and check the likes. There better be likes, yo. That's all I'm saying. 102 likes. That's all right. I think we could do better than that. I really do. And then for the community poll, would you sell Kieran Tierney for 50 million? It's 57% yes, 43% no. So get voting. Let me know what you guys think about the Kieran Tierney stuff. She knows a football. Thank you so much for your super chat. Says all the super chats I've sent since January, not once have I forgot to put the number 24 on there. Happy 24th. It's a lucky number. Arsenal kit with number 24. Well, I'll take all the luck I can get. I will. So Gabriel, just want to touch on this very quickly, that Gabriel is happy at Arsenal despite interest from Juventus. So we kind of spoke about this on one of the last shows, that Juventus is interested in Gabriel. It's interesting because it's all interconnected in my life, because Chiellini looks like he might be going to LAFC, which is my MLS team that I cover. And they see Gabriel as the perfect replacement for Chiellini. Juventus is a joke. Like, they'll never spend what's required to get Gabriel away from Arsenal. He's probably worth to us 60 million or something like that, and they'll never pay that. They'll try to, send us some of their drags to make it over the line. So, I think Arsenal will and should offer Gabriel a new contract. For what I remember, he's very low in terms of the salary that he's being paid, and in comparison to the other starters and key players at Arsenal right now. So Gabriel should and probably will be offered a new contract off of the back of this. I think his agent is trying to push us into giving him a new contract by entertaining some of these Juventus interest. But I like to hear that Gabriel is happy, doesn't want to leave, despite, the opportunity to maybe play in Champions League for Juventus. And so for me, that's a good thing. Unless Juventus were going to give us the 60 million, 65 million or something like that for Gabriel, or they were going to give us a player that we actually want, a Chiesa, a Vlahovic or something like that, I would not even entertain it. Because they're a freaking joke, and there's no world where they will be able to pay us the money. There's no world in which they'd be able to pay it. So She Knows Football says, we can't let Spurs get mile ahead. Please don't do this to us. This is the most important window in Arsenal's history. Keenan says, I don't think we can replace Gabriel for any less than 40 million. We should just keep him. Lynn says, we have been linked with Artur from Juventus. We have, but is that worth it? They'll want 20 million for him. So we'll only get 40 million in cash, and it'll probably be staggered over, a 10-year period. I don't think that that's worth it, to be honest, especially because it looks like we're very interested in Tielemans. I just don't think it's worth it. But I like the idea of having Gabriel, White, Saliba, and somebody else. I like that idea, especially for next season. And then after that, I think it's a more a better opportunity to talk about some of these players and maybe selling them if the bids come in. But right now it's just too early. And I love Gabriel. That's my center back. I love Gabriel, and I think he's a very good player. Maybe not ever going to be world class or anything like that, but I do think that he's a very good player. And there's no world where I would entertain anything lower than 65 million pounds, or a swap for one of their best players, which they're never going to do because they're a joke. So yeah. Keenan says, "Oh my God, please don't sign our tour. We don't need a shortish, slow playmaker in the middle." Fair enough. Billy says, "Juve will offer a 5-year loan with an option to buy for 20 million." Yo-Yo says, "Gabriel will be elite sooner than later. It really was a shrewd signing, reminiscent of our successful years." I love Gabriel. So, it would take a lot for me to be like willing to part with him or anything like that. And we just need the center backs right now to build from at the moment. We're just not in a space to, I think, be selling him for anything less than like a big, big sum. I don't know. I don't know what Gabriel will be. I think that he'll be a top center back, but when I look at world-class center backs, I'm looking at like, Van Dijk. I'm not sure if he'll ever be like at that level. I don't think he has to for us to be really good either. Billy says, "Gabriel can be world-class. He's the highest scoring center back in the league." I love that he's added that to his game. And, when's the last center back that we had that's actually scored some goals? Like, I love that about Gabriel, that he scores goals. Gabriel is awesome. Babu says Gabriel and Saliba will be solid. I love that. And just the idea of having different options for center back, especially like, let's say if Arteta ever humbles himself during a difficult game and lets us play a back three, how good would that be if Saliba, Ben White, and Gabriel with wing backs? So yeah, there you go. Let's move forward to death as for me, which would be Newcastle weighing up a 50 million pound bid for Kieran Tierney. Oh my gosh, slit my wrist. Like, it is that bad for me. I love Kieran Tierney so much. He was the first player for this project. Him and Gabriel came before the others, but Kieran Tierney's been here for a while. And I would hate to see him go. But some of the statistics regarding his availability, I think, have really brought to light how unavailable he's been. I think Orbinio put them up. I will read them out. Kieran Tierney has played just 56% of the possible Arsenal Premier League games since he's joined. He played just 64% of possible league games in his last 4 seasons at Celtic. So we know that Kieran Tierney he's been an injury-prone player. We bought him injured, so it was a risk at 25 million, and it hasn't seemed to really pay off, especially because we expect him to play every single game, and we've never really bolstered him with suitable backup. And I think the signing of Tavares has exacerbated that massively. I also think just him wanting to play for Scotland, even in friendlies, has not been the smartest thing. I mean, there's been games where Robertson wasn't available or didn't play, but Tierney was playing all the games. So it just has exacerbated things. And it's really unfortunate to see, somebody of Kieran Tierney's quality be unable to be fit. And availability is a skill, and we know it's important. Newcastle wanting to spend 50 million on Kieran Tierney, you have to consider the bid if it comes in. You do have to consider it. As much as it hurts me to say that, if it wasn't Kieran Tierney and I block the face out and I block out the number 3, then I would consider it whoever it was, and my love for the player does not, override the reality of the situation. Is that if somebody gives you 50 million for a player that plays 50% of your games max, then, and is 25 years old, so it may only get worse from here, you could buy another left back or even 2 for that amount. So it would hurt me to say that. I do think you have to consider it. I ultimately would say no, I still would say no, but you have to consider it. So in the community poll, like I said, about 58% said yes, you would sell Kieran Tierney for £50 million, and no, 42% of you guys said no. So it seems like most people would be up for something like this. What I will say is that the rest of the report did say that Kieran Tierney is happy at Arsenal and is not really looking for a move. It doesn't want to go anywhere. He's also just kind of signed a new big contract not too long ago. So I think that kind of, he wouldn't really be up for a move right now. But I do think you have to consider it because of his injury proneness, which really, really sucks. This is coming from Lath. And yeah, Newcastle, Eddie Howe maybe is interested in Kieran Tierney, but he's happy. And I also think that I saw something where Kieran Tierney is part of the players that they're not going to consider selling. So there you go. Thank you so much for your super chat. Ashino's Football says the best ability is availability. Sorry, KT, great player, but it's over. If we were to bring in Aaron Hickey and he was closer to Kieran Tierney where Tavares wasn't, do you think that him being injured would bother you as much? I do think not having suitable backup has made this more of a oh my gosh, we need to figure this out right now. Whereas if Tavares had not been so hit or miss and Arteta had trusted him more, it wouldn't be as big of a deal, or we wouldn't be so desperate to sell Kieran Tierney. Crypto FPL says just sell Kieran Tierney and get the Bologna kid. Augustine says, what formation do you think we'll play next season, Jess? I think we'll play a 4-3-3. Coach Dave says, I thought Kieran Tierney was wifey. He is wifey. Ultimately, I would not sell him, but you have to consider the bid. You can't be silly, so you have to consider it. Just like, Kieran Tierney's wifey, but, somebody somebody who looks really nice is walking past you. You're going to look at it and consider it. Going to consider it, but you're going to go back to wifey. That's kind of where I am right now. Lestepa says, somebody get the hell out of KT from bidding him, one of our own, our next captain. I think ultimately that's why he won't be sold, is because he's an important leadership figure for the project in the short term. So, but you do have to look at it. Amira says, just to clarify, I love KT, not complaining about 50 million. Seems suspiciously high is the profit we make worth more than the leadership mentality, etc., that he brings. Seems like even Newcastle can see it. If they have somebody like Dan Burn, who has been a really big mentality figure for them, and Kieran Tierney, Kieran Tierney has it. He has that. He just is not as available as you would want him to be. If we could rest him during games, Kieran Tierney doesn't need to be playing 90 minutes against Norwich. He doesn't need to be playing 90 minutes against Leeds when we're beating them up 4-1. We played him and Thomas Partey into the ground when we had Sambi and Nuno available. And maybe Arteta felt we couldn't win those games without them. But I don't think that's actually what he needed to be doing. Soft rotation was not done. And so they ended up being injury prone right after the international break. It was bound to happen if you just continuously play them. So I think if you have more suitable backup that's closer to Kieran Tierney, somebody like an Aaron Hickey that has some first team experience more than, Nuno Tavares, we're fine. And you don't actually have to sell him. But a big bid like that, that's a lot of money. Alistair Ben says 50 million from Newcastle. No, but if Madrid offered 40 million, I would consider. Would you be worried about Kieran Tierney being a part of a team that's going in the right direction? The Winchester Pubcast says Kieran Tierney is 60 million plus. Blaze says, Jess, why would some Arsenal fans change opinion on Tierney? Because before injury, Tierney was one of our most favorable players by Arsenal fans. I just think, ultimately he was obviously carrying an injury for a long period of time. His knee was really bothering him. And during that time, he had some off performances, and also Tomiyasu wasn't there on that right-hand side. So things had to shift because Cedric was bombing forward and he was staying back. And ultimately, if Kieran Tierney is not bombing up the left-hand side at every moment, people are freaking out about it. But then they were also complaining when that was our only way of creating chances. So Arsenal fans talk out of both sides of their mouths. I think, you get suitable backup, you get a striker that can actually head the ball in, and you love Kieran Tierney again, because he's not being played into the ground. But this season has been a very they were so used to him being our main source of not content creation, of chance creation for the year prior, that him not bombing up the side 24/7 was seen as some sort of massive fall off in his production. But we were getting goals from other places. And when Tomiyasu went out and Cedric was bombing forward, Kieran Tierney also can't bomb forward. We need to have the balance. And so Arsenal fans changed their opinions. And I haven't changed my opinion on Kieran Tierney. I think that we should keep him. I think he's a leader. I think he's our captain. As we've seen from Odegaard, I don't think he's quite captain material, but I think Kieran Tierney is. And if you can softly rotate him with somebody like an Aaron Hickey and not Nuno Tavares, and Arteta trust that backup, we'd be fine. I don't think it's that big of I don't think it's as big of a deal as people are making it out to seem. Nobody's ever rotated Kieran Tierney. Celtic ran him into the ground. Arsenal have run him into the ground. Scotland has run him into the ground. He just needs to be managed better. The Edry says the thing with Tierney is that he is not only a player but a symbol. For me, he's like a symbol. He's somebody that I feel like what he gives to us in the intangibles is not really easily replaced. And he's also a good enough left back where if we could just keep him fit by also rotating somebody else in, you could get the best of Tierney and not have to sell him. S says KT is faster than Aaron Hickey with one hamstring. Ralph says Tierney needs to go if we're going to compete. High Tech J says if Nuno was good enough, I'd be fine with keeping KT. I think if we bring in a backup that's closer, it's fine. Kiki says selling key players is standard procedure at Arsenal anyway. Johnson says KT is our captain for next season. He's not for sale. I don't think Arsenal will sell him. I don't think they're interested in selling Gabriel or Kieran Tierney. But teams are looking at our players, which I think if Juventus is wanting Gabriel to replace Chiellini, if Newcastle want Kieran Tierney, then that says something about our players and their value. And I don't think we need to be chasing them out right now. Not right now. Yo-Yo says Kieran Tierney's injuries make him at best 1B. He can't be a definitive first choice. Can't build a solid house with fragile foundations. I hear that. She Knows Football says Cucurella wigs ordered yet. Let's get him. I love Cucurella. In an alternate universe, he's my left back. And I think he's going to go to Manchester City. He would be perfect for them. And the links to Man City make so much sense. I said that first time I saw him, I was like, he's going to play for Man City. It also helps that he comes from La Masia. That makes it an easy link as well because he can play in that style. So I'll be happy to watch him at another club. I just don't think we're in a position to bring somebody like Cucurella in. But of course, I'd take him. Lynn says, Jess, but once you have recurring injuries, that will only get worse. We need players that are less injury prone. Yeah, I mean, I hear that. I just feel like you could just bring in another starting level left back. And I mean, Nuno Tavares was a punt that ultimately did not pay off. And so with that, we ended up playing Kieran Tierney when we didn't need to. So yeah, his injuries may still be there. But that also is I see players that have injury issues that are managed at other clubs. They just have good enough backups where it doesn't matter. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. Keenan says, Cucurella is a boss. He's so damn good in the Prem. I can't believe he adapted so quick. I mean, the guy is a star, isn't he? Alistair says, if you can get someone in as good, you can play him every other game or take him off early. That's kind of what I think we need to do. Zich says, hey, Newcastle, how about a Bellerin in a KT wig for about 30 million? I hear that. So yeah, it seems like more of you guys are willing to sell him than keep him. Ultimately, I don't think Arsenal are going to sell him. So I'm down for another year of KT number 3, our captain. So Just kind of wrapping up here, Ramsdale, Ben White, and Saka have been called up to the England squad. I don't want Saka to go. I don't want Ben White to go. Ramsdale can go because he probably won't play, but I need Saka to sit down. I like that they're getting, the call-ups because that's ultimately probably what they want. But man, like, would I love for him to just have his feet up and just relaxing for next season. And, Southgate, when he has Arsenal players in his team, he tends to play them, which annoys me. But it's good for them to get the call up. ESR not being called up, I don't think is like a surprise based on his form off of the back end of the season. He's another one that kind of just needs to sit down, get some rest, and then work on his fitness. So I think this is about right. I think they deserve it, but ultimately I'd like for them to sit down, especially Ben White and Saka. But yeah, it's a good day for Arsenal Football Club, I think, when our key players are being recognized by their national teams. So I love that. And last but not least, Richarlison. Arsenal have been keeping tabs on Richarlison's situation at Everton. They want $50 million for him. I asked people what they thought about Richarlison, if they actually rated him, and a lot of people said no. They couldn't see him in the Arsenal kit. I kind of feel the same way, that I can't see him playing for Arsenal. I cannot see him in the red and white. But I do think he's a quality player that is not worth 50 million though. Like, the max I would pay for him is probably like 30. I think Everton will look to keep Dominic Calvert-Lewin and sell Richarlison, especially because Richarlison basically saved them from relegation. And he's honestly way too good to be there. But Arsenal keeping tabs on him, I think, more speaks to the fact that we want to bring in another attacker on that left-hand side. I think that's primarily where Richarlison plays, and also through the middle. For me, a better option would be maybe somebody like a Cody Gakpo or something like that. If I'm going to pay 50 million, maybe go ask Bayern for Gnabry or something, But Richarlison is a good player that I do think would be good at Arsenal. I just can't see him in the kit. So it's a difficult one for me. Keenan says Richarlison is potentially the best Brazilian striker for the next 5 to 7 years. He's so worth it. What I will say about him is he works extremely hard, and he's not a fancy player. So him being Brazilian, I think obviously you look for Joga Bonito and you want to see all the flicks and the tricks and the Neymar-like skills. He just works really, really hard. And what I like about the more current Brazilian squad is that they just have a lot of hard workers in there, and Richarlison is a good example of that. So he's never going to walk. He's always going to do everything he can to make sure that the team wins. That's also why you see him do a lot of rolling around on the ground and all that kind of stuff, which is really annoying. But I'm sure when he's on your team, you really like him. I would not pick him over Gabriel Jesus. I don't think he's anywhere near the type of player that Gabriel Jesus is. And also Gabriel Jesus has the experience that we need. Champions League experience. He's won the league before multiple times with Manchester City. I think he's a better player. So I wouldn't choose Richarlison over Gabriel Jesus, but he's a good player that has a lot of good qualities and works really hard. So would you guys take Richarlison for 50 million at Arsenal? Because that's what it would take to bring him. Lone Star says Jesus and Richarlison. She Knows Football says how Arteta got rid of Aubameyang is beyond me. Top 4 easy with a happy Aubameyang. That's the key. He wasn't happy. George's opinion says definitely not. Jesus is better. S says I take Zaha over Richarlison. Edison says I prefer we buy 2 strikers and keep Nketiah as a third, then spend 50 million on Richarlison. Fair enough. St. Vincent says we didn't have Europe and KT couldn't play over 50% of the games. Come on, guys. He didn't have anybody to rotate with. We played him into the ground. Scotland did, and Celtic did as well. You have to look at the recruitment of Nuno Tavares and the fact that Arteta didn't trust him, because ultimately this was meant to be fixed. And so that more to me speaks more about Edu and his recruitment than Kieran Tierney, somebody who we know has injury issues. Crypto FPL says, Richie is a proven EPL player, so I immediately won't pick him ahead of Jesus. But if we can't get Jesus, then Richie will be considered. Club de Football Arsenal. Yep. You guys know I love my Brazilians, so bring them. I just can't see Richarlison at Arsenal, even though he's really a talented player and very hardworking, which I love about him. Let's see. Nashville says DCL would fit better at Arsenal at me. S says I take DCL over Richarlison. I want neither though. So yeah, there's some differences of opinions here. Augustine says, Jess, I want Jude Bellingham, Victor Osimhen, Gabriel Jesus, Yuri Tielemans, and Rafinha from Leeds. I mean, that would be a sick window. Don't think it would get done though. So let's see. Hey Boss says the team does need more physicality. See Palace and Newcastle games as examples of the missing steel in our side. If you bring in Gabriel Jesus, Osimhen, not necessarily Tielemans, but those two in particular, I do think you bring up the physicality of the team because both of them can run and get stuck in. So I do think that's a good point. Richarlison as well. I just would not pick him over Jesus. But yeah, let's see what else. Nashville says Brazilians look good but can be painful at times. S says I'd buy Gabriel Jesus only and let Eddie be our number 2. Eddie's definitely not staying to be a third choice striker. I agree. George's opinion says those 2 games a week Tierney played for Scotland with a knee injury was on both Tierney and the Scotland manager. They were friendlies and Klopp got Robertson to not. I agree with that. Some of that is definitely on Tierney and the fact that he was needed to play in those friendlies. He didn't need to do that. He's going to make the team. There's no reason to do that. So yeah. And Shaheen says thoughts on Moses Caicedo from Brighton. Their recruitment is A1. It is. And he's a great player who I think would be useful in our midfield to add that physicality. They've been ready for Bissouma to leave for over a year now by having Caicedo. So you see that future planning. Brighton are one of the best run clubs in the Premier League. If they could just get a striker, they'd be on point. I think they're much better run than the likes of Aston Villa and these clubs that are spending a lot of money on players, but you're not really seeing the return. They've spent very little and look at what they've gotten out of their team. So for me, Brighton is one of the best run clubs and Caicedo is right there to step in for Bissouma when they ultimately sell him probably to Aston Villa. So yeah, there you go. But that's kind of it on the headlines for today. Again, you guys, come back at 10 p.m. UK time. I will be back to kind of talk about Arsenal's transfer plans as outlined by Ornstein in The Athletic. We haven't really gotten to what he kind of said around what the plan is and the players or the positions that are actually going to be addressed and the players that we've been looking at. So if you guys were looking for more of an analysis on what Ornstein was talking about, come back at 10 p.m. UK time and we'll talk about it then. All right, you guys, that's it. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. There's 350 of you guys here. About 163 of you guys like the video. So get in there and do that for me. It's completely free. Thank you to all the members and everybody who super chatted. I will see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.